Welcome to Strategy Next by Jay Helmy and Company, the premier podcast for business leaders and professionals. On Strategy Next, we delve into the latest tactics and strategies driving the future of business through interviews with top industry experts and thought leaders. From growing startups to leading large enterprises, this podcast is a must-listen for executives, managers, and aspiring business leaders. Tune in to stay ahead of the game and elevate your strategic planning.
Welcome to Strategy Next. I'm your host for today, Jon Lobb, and a very special guest joining us today. He's an adjunct professor at the University of Southern California. He has advised numerous corporate boards and startups. He has been featured at TEDx, on TV, radio, and various podcasts. And his work has been featured in Newsweek, Time, the Harvard Business Review, USA Today, and many more major media outlets. Please join me in welcoming Sid Mohasseb. Sid, welcome to our podcast. It's a pleasure to have you.
The pleasure is mine, John, to be with you and your audience.
Thank you so much. For those of you who haven't had the opportunity to hear from you before, could you just give us a little bit of your background and some of the work that you've accomplished over the years?
Sure. I'll be quick. Obviously, I'm old and it's going to take a long time to go through the whole rigmarole, the mess, the merry-go-round of my life. But basically, I'm an immigrant and started my first company when I was still in school. For the first 10 or so years, I was in the consulting business. I worked with very large organizations, Fortune 500 companies on operations and strategy. Then I got into the turnaround business, meaning buying companies. And this was when there was a lot of hoopla around leverage buyouts and so forth. So I got into buying companies and syndicated or directly and turning them around. During the same time, I started building companies in the technology space mostly and sold some of them. I had one that didn't work in the .com era. And then after selling another one of my companies, which was in the distribution company, which was in the distribution business, and we had offices in China and in Europe and in the States, I became an angel investor. I made investments in early stage companies, which I still do. Started a fund. And then for the last piece, before I kind of focused on the three things that I'm focused on now, I was on a board of a company. One of my investments jumped in and drove the company to exit to KPMG. And I was the national strategic innovation leader for their strategy group for a number of years. Now I do three things. I write books. I've got a couple of books. You can, see them behind me. I do lots of articles, as you mentioned. I do some speaking engagements and conversations that people would ask me to do so. I teach at USC, both in the engineering school and in the Marshall Business School. I still do some advisory work and make investments in early stage companies.
Wonderful. What a background. And just in reviewing your website, it's just amazing all of the different areas that you've been involved in. And you talk about yourself as an entrepreneur and a philosopher. I think of you more as a thinker and a doer. You are an action man. You don't just sit and think great thoughts. You have accomplished quite a bit.
I appreciate the kind words. I don't know if it's a disease or it's a positive or a negative. You can't sit alone. You got to create things. So I think the enjoyment is in the journey of building things.
Absolutely.
And the focus that I've had over the years, as you can see, has been around building and creating and doing it not as a means of making money, but as a means of creating something. And yes, it has made money. I won't deny that. But the objective hasn't been necessarily, hey, let's go and make a lot of money and not have anything valuable to people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the thoughts that you've shared on your website, Sid, is you talk about the bend in the road ahead, how if all of us could see what's coming, of course, we could all make the perfect bed every time. Why is it that so many bright people, especially angels and startups, so many bright people have wonderful ideas, and yet sometimes they are thrown by that bend in the road that they did not anticipate? Can you talk a little bit about that bend in the road and
Sure.
why some are not able to see it?
Sure. So there's a few fundamental things that impacts the way I see that comment. One is that I believe that we all have the ability to see the bends in the road by connecting the dots, the things that are happening around us. Why? Because I'm not, Einstein. And the difference is if you listen and you aim to learn. Most people, this is what I've learned, and actually I joke around with my wife, when we're somewhere and say, see, this proves my point. Again and again, because people don't listen to learn. They listen to react. And they listen to prove their own point. And by listening, I don't mean just with our ears. We can listen with the senses that we have, the way people behave, the way things are. We can learn from anybody. I'll say our gurus are everybody out there. It could be a teller in a bank, or it could be your colleague, or it could be your friend, or it could be our boss. If we listen, we learn things. If we observe, we sense, we're capable of doing it. So the reason we don't see it is because we don't want to see it. But the want is we don't want to listen. We don't want to pay attention. We don't want to look at the thing. Sometimes because our ego doesn't let us. Sometimes because we think we're better. We see it, but we ignore it because we think the role of an entrepreneur, for example, you mentioned businesses, is to push barriers. And so if I don't see it, I don't have to be afraid of it. And therefore,
Almost
sometimes it's the fear.
a hubris almost.
Yeah.
That reminds me of your comment earlier about you had one failure during the dot-com era. There was a lot of crazy money in the dot-com era.
There was.
A lot of feeling like the rules don't apply anymore. That's mint money. Do you think that a lot of people refused to look beyond the bend in the road because it just seemed like this time is different?
Every time is different, and sometimes you have a wave and people ride the wave, and it's perfectly fine to ride a wave.
Mm-hmm.
The economy, the market, and so forth allows you to get faster traction, get ahead of the curve. But you can only go up with the wave so far. What goes up goes down, the wave comes down. And if you don't have the value proposition and you're not relevant and you're not connecting or don't have or haven't found what the reason is that people would engage with you and would buy your product or your services, then you're not going to stay on the top of the wave. It's quite clear. So yes, there are some times where the market fools us into we have something. That's the other thing. The market, because the market is moving, we believe we've got something that is relevant to people, that we have found what the connection is and all that sort of stuff. But we haven't. It's just that there's a wave and we're on top of it. Can we see the bend? Can we see that we're on the? Of course we can. But sometimes it's easier to ride the wave. The other thing is obviously, and for example, you mentioned the dot-com era and the 2000 era. You have a lot of people look around and say, "Oh, look at that guy! Oh, look at that guy! I could do that! I could do that!" And then, yes, you can, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have any value proposition. It doesn't mean that you don't put in the hard work. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't understand the basics of business and entrepreneurship. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be educated about things that you want to do. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't listen. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a plan. Yes. And the other thing is everybody wants to be Elon Musk and everybody wants to be Mark Zuckerberg. Oh, look at that guy. Didn't even go to school. Look where he is. Well, the example of Bill Gates. Bill Gates, you know how many books he reads every week?
He's
been doing it for 50 years.
Yes. Funny you mentioned him. He is a voracious reader, and he encourages others to read. And he says, I never want to stop learning.
Yeah. I mean, that's the mindset that we can all have. It's not his mindset. It could be everybody's mindset. No, John, we gotta be fair. Life gets in the way.
Yes.
Bill Gates did get where he gets it, but the first meeting that he had with IBM, his mom was on the board of this, and his dad was that, and he got connections to get to that place, and then he wanted to buy that thing from the other guy, which made the DOS platform. He paid $50,000. Where did he get it? He got it from his mom. So he had, and then, yeah, he was at Harvard. He was a smart guy to begin with. And he did get into an elite school, not because there are not other smart people who don't get there. He had some advantages. So let's not fool ourselves in terms of saying that, oh, everybody could be him, or Zuckerberg was at Stanford. I mean, was at Harvard. It's not that these guys just all of a sudden popped up with no education, no reading, no attention, and then they became who they are. And then look how many of them can ride this wave, because we can all have a good life. We could start a business, we could do things, but not that many people can go from running $1 million business to running $1 billion business. It's just hard. It's not easy. It requires a different kind of a mindset, and it requires a significant growth at every stage of the business. A $5 million business is very different than a $1 million business. A $20 million business is entirely different. You get to $100 million, and every time you move up, your risks get changed, the way you delegate gets changed, your comfort with technology gets changed. There's a lot of different factors, and there are not that many people that can scale mentally
to that extent.
There are not that many people.
Interesting.
And it's okay. We're not all the same.
Exactly.
It's perfectly fine. I can't be LeBron James, or I can't be Kobe, or I can't be any of these great basketball players or baseball players. And that's perfectly fine. Not everybody has to be the same thing. We're all different.
Absolutely. And thank goodness we are. One of the comments you made, Sid, was you talk about the term relevancy. And that's a term I see a lot especially with new companies, especially in internet and the next generation. People talk about, we are relevant. We're today, we're now. But it seems like not so many people know how to stay relevant. Can you talk about the concept of relevancy?
Yeah, I guess there's really two parts to that question. One is people say, I am relevant. The fact that you're now doesn't make you relevant. And relevance is not something that you and I define or we put on our website. Relevance is something that somebody else does define.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this concept that's gaining some momentum and some people globally are implementing it, which is the idea is that we focus on outcomes and not reasons. And this is for a part, it's our MBA schools that have done this to us too, and Wall Street has done it. We measure how much money we make, we measure the profit, we measure the revenue, we measure outcomes and focus on those things, where the real reason that those outcomes are realized is the reason that people behave in a certain way. Let me give you an example. I don't sell, people buy. I don't have the decision, they have the decision.
Mm-hmm.
Your customers have the decision to look at whatever you're offering them and say, yes, I like it, it has value to me, it is relevant to me, and here's a check.
Mm-hmm.
So all I'm doing is presenting a value proposition and looking for this exchange to happen, looking for that person, that customer, that company, whoever the other party is, to say, yeah, I like it. This satisfies my need in some form or shape. I can use this either for functionality or prestige or whatever reason there is. There is a bundle of satisfaction that they say, yep, I like it. Now, just to expand on this a little bit, you also have the employees. We think we gave employees a job. In reality, they accept a job. We think we give them X number of dollars and they work 8 hours or 10 hours or whatever we think in our mind. But in their acceptance, the employees say, I'm going to bring X number of my capabilities, commitment, and time availability to this job because they're giving me $50 an hour. I'm really worth $100 an hour. But hey, I need to pay the rent. And this is actually pretty good. I can get off at 5 o'clock and not be, feeling bad. People make decisions based on what their bundle of satisfaction is and what is relevant to them. The same thing applies to investors who invest in your company, to partners that partner with you, to the society that accepts you as a part of the community. So relevance is a function of them, not us. So when people say, "Oh, we're relevant," the fact that you're now doesn't make you relevant. The fact that you have the best GPT ad of whatever, that doesn't make you relevant. The fact that what makes you relevant is, have you provided the reason for people to make that exchange? And it's not just customers, it's all the other pillars. If you're not relevant for the employees, you'll have an issue. Just like you're not relevant for the customers, you're not relevant to your partners, you have an issue. If you're not relevant to your investors, you have an issue. Now, the thing is, the world we live in is in constant flux. The same customer that we have today, it's the same age, same sex, lives in the same neighborhood, but it's not the same. The employee that we have is very different than the employee we had 4 or 5 years ago. Their expectations, what is relevant to them, what satisfies them is very different. So this is always changing. So to be relevant, you have to be relevant to all of them to have a good business. You can't be relevant to one and ignore the others.
Absolutely.
Because then you don't have a functioning machine.
Absolutely.
Okay? You have an engine, you have a car, you have to drive this car from point A to point B, and that's when you make money. That's when that revenue or outcome comes in. So if you have a flat tire, if the engine doesn't work, if the electrical, any one of these pieces don't work, you're stuck.
Absolutely.
So a business requires all of those relevancies to be satisfied. And they're always changing. So what is relevant? How do I explain relevant? Again, it's their relevant. So I got to listen. I got to be engaged. I got to figure out how each one of these pieces are working. What is their need? What is their reasons of engaging with me? And then I have to be able to flexible to evolve because they're changing. A lot of people say, I have this product. I have this service. And then they can't stay relevant because they're not listening to the other pieces. I built this and it's good and I think it has value. But the market has moved, the people have moved, you haven't moved. And that makes running a business difficult because you're not always selling the same thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it brings up the thought that a business could be completely relevant. It could be critically relevant. But if the customer isn't getting that message, if they don't see the relevance, it's not going to work.
Absolutely. So if you divide up the business in pieces, most people say this is sales. Sales job, sales and marketing is to communicate revenue.
Absolutely.
To communicate revenue. R&D and manufacturing is to create revenue. Distribution of some sort is to deliver value, right? So sales and marketing must be focused on communicating value, communicating relevance. The engine that builds the value is the manufacturing, the guys that put the R&D, that they measure, so they're creating value. And then you have the distribution and all that is delivering value. And when you get those things right, revenue and profits would follow.
Simple as that.
It is simple if you really look at it. It's not complicated. Now, here's the thing. People think, but there is a difference. See, I can give you all the books in the world, the how-to books in the world. Okay? And this is what we're used to. We think that if we read all these books and the how-tos, that would make us an entrepreneur or successful entrepreneur. I can buy you all the pots and the pans and the sharpest knives and the best ingredients and give it to you and put you in the kitchen. That doesn't make you a great chef.
No.
You're a great chef because you feel like a chef, because you sense it. You love cooking. You love doing what you're doing. And you have the ability. Yes, it's important to have the right knife. It's important to learn the how-tos of marketing and accounting and all that sort of stuff. But the fact that you've read them doesn't necessarily make you an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely.
So anyway, so relevance is always in flux and it's defined by others. It's not defined by us.
Absolutely. Interesting. Switching gears a little bit, Sid, you mentioned GPT. AI is such a buzzword these days. It's everywhere. You can't look at the news without some different angle on AI, artificial intelligence. From your perspective, will it be our master or will it be our tool?
It depends on us. So imagine this. Imagine if I could say, hey, if I could increase the capacity of my mind to do 10 times more than what I can do, to listen more, to connect the dots so I can see the bend around the road.
Mm-hmm.
It could do it faster, it could do it better, because my mind has certain capacity in consuming information, packaging information. Insight is a matter of running data in our mind. What we call experience is basically a collection of data points of what we've done, and we connect them together and say, oh, A is better than B. I've done this before. What does that mean? I've done this before means I have a collection of data points. So if I can have this massive machine or machines or whatever you want to call them processing this stuff faster, then I am better able to make decisions that are more in tune with the data. I have more experience, if you would, because I have more data and I have more process. So is it good for us? Yes, it is. Are we ready for it? No, we're not, because there's a few issues. A is the comfort of life. I do this thing and I've done it for 47 years, and I have another 5 years to live or 10 years to do this. Why the hell do I want to go do something else? And now all of a sudden somebody comes in and says you're out of a job. So there's fear, and that fear is justified. The problem is that because media wants to get more clicks, they focus on the fear. And would the fear go away or be reduced if we have the right skill setting, if we have the right approach? I'll give you one example. In Hong Kong, about a couple of years ago, they introduced for every school, middle school, 400 and change schools are in Hong Kong. Every middle school has a class around AI ethics, AI use, and so forth.
Wow.
They're teaching him AI, they're teaching him how to use it. We in Florida and some other places have bills in the state that kids should not use AI. Okay, so we're saying this is bad. They're saying, okay, so they're getting people more encouraged and says, who's going to be ready in 5 years or 10 years, us or them? Yeah, so we are creating this fear mongering because of some of the limitations that we have. I mean, if we are a politician, we want to vote, so we want to satisfy the mother who says, oh, why is this doing this? Oh, okay, we're going to limit this. We're not thinking around the bend, if you would.
Yes, absolutely.
Anything that has a $15 trillion economic anything, which is what AI's promises within the next few years. $15 trillion of economic value a year.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
Now that's almost close to 1.4 billion people working in China. That's close to the GDP of China.
Wow.
Okay? That's, I don't know, somewhere around 10 times or more the GDP of Canada. Okay?
Wow.
It's massive. Anything that is providing this kind of an economic value in productivity, in revenue, and you can't stop it.
Absolutely.
So it's here. And it's gonna be there, and it's gonna, affect people. And either you fall in and you embrace it and you learn about it, and it would be beneficial. So that's one thing. The other thing is this notion that what is the next 100 years would look like, right? Let's assume that the cars are driving themselves and the machines are running all the accountings and the cash registers. You look at them and they know what you bought, and all that sort of stuff is happening on its own. And cars flying on the, all of that stuff. So what are we doing? We're sitting on the back seat of a car, Tesla, and playing with our Facebook, Instagram, posting all the time. Is that the future of human beings? Or is it because we have all of these capabilities, all of these experiences, all of these, the machines, what is ChatGPT? They say smart because it's read thousands and thousands of books. If I had done that, I would be, but I'm not doing it. But it's okay. I have access to somebody who has.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, the challenge of human being, I think, is in the creativity and innovation. And we're not used to that. We're used to doing the mundane things to make a buck and pay for milk and gas at the gas station or at Ralph's. Because we have to.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have to. So there's a painful meanwhile, as Lyndon Johnson will put it, for us to get to a place. But I am pretty optimistic that if the master is the one not that controls, but that defines the future of whatever. And I think with our creativity, ability to create, ability to innovate, as human beings, as we have proven over thousands of years, we would overcome it. Now, would it happen in 100 years or 200 years? Would there be stages of who's the master, who's the slave? I don't know. I'm not that smart. I can't see around the bend that far.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, with that said, we need to wrap up our talk today, but I wanted to thank you once again for your time. What a fascinating discussion. It's truly an honor to be able to visit with you and to get some of your insights. And really thank you on behalf of our audience for spending some time with us and sharing your thoughts.
You're kind and humble me, John. I appreciate to be with you, and it's one man's opinion.
Thank you, Sid, so much. Take care.
You.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
That's it for this episode of Strategy Next. We hope you enjoyed our conversation and felt informed and enlightened about the topic discussed. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. You can find us on all major podcast platforms, and if you have any comments or suggestions for future episodes, please reach out to us at strategynext@jhelmy.co. Week with another expert guest, ready to share their insights and expertise with you. Until next time, thank you for listening to Strategy Next by J. Helmy & Company. Strategy reinvented.